Rain had turned the narrow streets of Belgrave into black ribbons of water by the time Ilara Vane left the apothecary. She pulled her cloak tighter and hurried toward the estate where she had spent most of her life feeling like an unwanted guest. Then a muffled sound stopped her. Someone was crying. The noise came from beneath a crumbling stone archway. Ilara hesitated before stepping into the shadows. A man sat against the wall, his dark coat soaked through, one hand pressed against his face. She recognized him immediately. Duke Cashin Rook, the most feared nobleman in Belgrave. Servants whispered that he had a heart made of iron. Merchants lowered their voices when he entered their shops. Even aristocrats who outranked him treated him carefully because Cashin had a reputation for destroying anyone who betrayed him. Yet the man before Ilara looked nothing like the duke she had heard about. His shoulders shook. His expensive gloves lay discarded beside him. Blood covered his knuckles. Ilara stopped several paces away. "Your Grace." Cashin's head snapped upward. His eyes were red, his expression raw with grief. For one unguarded second, Ilara saw the loneliness beneath his terrifying reputation. Then the mask returned. "Leave." Ilara glanced at the rain pouring beyond the archway. "You are bleeding." "I said leave. And I heard you." She stepped closer. Cashin rose abruptly, but pain crossed his face, forcing him against the wall again. Ilara reached into her satchel and pulled out a clean cloth. "Give me your hand." His expression hardened. "No." "Then bleed on your sleeve." Something almost resembling amusement flickered across his face before disappearing. He reluctantly extended his hand. As Ilara cleaned the blood from his knuckles, she noticed that the wounds were not from a fight. His fists were scraped from striking stone. What happened? Cashin looked toward the empty street. "My brother died." Ilara's hands went still. "He was 17, Cashin continued. "He was supposed to inherit nothing, command nothing, and trouble no one. He was simply my brother." His voice broke on the final word. Ilara understood then that the anger everyone feared was only grief wearing armor. "You loved him. More than anything." She finished wrapping his hand. "You don't have to pretend with me." Cashin stared at her. "No one speaks to me like that. Perhaps everyone is too frightened." "You aren't." "I am." His brow furrowed. "But I'm more frightened of leaving someone alone when they need kindness." For a moment, Cashin seemed unable to respond. Then he whispered, "I promised him I would protect him." Ilara saw the guilt consuming him. "You couldn't have known." "I should have." "You are not responsible for every terrible thing that happens to the people you love." Cashin's composure finally shattered. He lowered his head, and a single tear slipped down his cheek. Ilara made her decision before she could reconsider it. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Cashin froze. No one had touched him with tenderness in years. Ilara felt his entire body tense beneath her arms. Then, slowly, his hands closed around her. He buried his face against her shoulder. The Duke who had terrified half the kingdom began to cry. Ilara said nothing. She simply held him while the rain whispered against the stones. Neither of them noticed the figure standing across the street. The stranger wore a black cloak and a silver ring bearing the crest of House Varick. He watched Cashin and Ilara carefully before turning away. Because Cashin's brother had not died by accident, and the man who had ordered his death had just discovered the one person capable of reaching the Duke's heart. The next morning, Ilara expected the previous night's encounter to remain a secret. Instead, before breakfast had been served, a royal messenger arrived at her family's residence with an order bearing the king's seal. She was commanded to appear before the court. Ilara's stomach tightened as she entered the palace. The marble hall was crowded with nobles who turned toward her with barely concealed curiosity. Whispers followed her across the floor. "That is the woman from the alley. The Duke was seen with her. Perhaps she planned the entire thing." Ilara kept walking. At the far end of the chamber stood Lord Severin Varick, smiling as though he had been waiting for her. He was elegant, composed, and handsome in the polished manner of a man who had never been forced to reveal his true nature. "You caused quite a stir," Severin said. "I helped a grieving man." "A duke," he corrected. "A duke who has enemies. Then perhaps those enemies should be questioned." His smile vanished. Before he could answer, the king raised a hand. "Lady Alara, Lord Varric claims you have been meeting secretly with Duke Rook." "I met him once. Alone. Yes." The murmurs grew louder. Severin stepped forward and produced a folded letter. This was found among the Duke's belongings. Alara recognized her own handwriting. Her blood ran cold. It was a short note she had written months earlier to Cashin's younger brother after helping him obtain medicine. Someone had removed it from an old correspondence box and deliberately placed it among Cashin's possessions. Severin looked toward the king. "It suggests Lady Alara has been connected to the Rook family for some time." "That is a lie," Alara said. "Can you prove it?" She looked around the chamber. No one moved. Then the doors opened. Cashin entered. He wore black, his expression colder than winter, and a fresh bandage covered one hand. Every conversation stopped. His eyes went immediately to Alara. "Who accused her?" Severin answered smoothly. "I did." Cashin walked toward him. "You forged evidence." "Careful, Your Grace." "No." Cashin stopped inches away from him. "You be careful." The king demanded silence, but Cashin never looked away from Severin. "My brother trusted very few people," he said. Lady Alara was one of the last people he wrote to before his death. Severin's expression flickered. Alara noticed. Cashin noticed too. "Why does that frighten you?" "It doesn't." "Then why are you sweating?" For the first time, uncertainty entered Severin's eyes. The king ordered an investigation, but Severin bowed calmly and left the chamber. Alara followed Cashin into the corridor. "You shouldn't have come. I was told you were being accused of treason." "I can defend myself." "I know." He stopped. "That is precisely why I was afraid." Alara stared at him. The ruthless duke suddenly looked exhausted. "You were kind to me when everyone else would have walked past," he said quietly. "I will not allow anyone to punish you for it." Before she could answer, a servant came running toward them. "Your Grace." Cashin turned. "The Duke's carriage has been attacked." His face changed instantly. "Who was inside?" The servant swallowed. "Your brother's old valet." Cashin's eyes darkened. "Is he alive?" "Barely." They raced to the courtyard. The valet lay beside the shattered carriage, clutching something in his bloodied hand. Cashin knelt. "What happened?" The old man struggled to breathe. "They killed your brother," he whispered. "Not the way you were told." Cashin went rigid. "Who?" The valet lifted his trembling hand and revealed a silver ring. The crest of House Varric gleamed beneath the blood. Then the valet collapsed. Alara looked at Cashin. For the first time since she had met him, she saw something more dangerous than anger in his eyes. Certainty. "Severin," he whispered. And somewhere inside the palace, a door slammed shut. Cashin did not wait for the king's permission. The moment the wounded valet was carried inside, he ordered the palace gates sealed and sent trusted guards toward House Varric. Alara followed him through the rain, refusing to let him face the danger alone. "You should stay here," Cashin said. "You said that last night. And you ignored me. I intend to continue." Despite the blood on his sleeve and fury in his eyes, Cashin almost smiled. Then a messenger arrived with terrible news. Severin had fled. Worse, he had taken the valet's daughter hostage. Cashin's expression hardened. "Where?" "The old chapel beyond Blackmere Forest." Alara immediately understood. "He wants you to come after him." "I know. It is a trap." "I know that too." "Then don't go alone." Cashin looked at her for several seconds. "No." Alara stepped closer. "You once told me no one speaks to you without fear." "I'm not afraid of you, Cashin." And I'm not leaving you to walk into a trap by yourself. His jaw tightened. You could be killed. So could you. That is different. How? Because I can survive what happens to me. Ilara's voice softened. Then let me help you survive it. Something changed in his expression. He nodded. They rode into Blackmere Forest before dawn. The trees swallowed the road, and mist curled between their horses' legs. When they reached the ruined chapel, they found the doors hanging open. Inside, the valet's daughter was tied to a chair. Cashin rushed toward her. A blade flashed from the shadows. He twisted aside, but another attacker struck him from behind. Ilara screamed his name. Within seconds, armed men surrounded them. Severin stepped into the candlelight. You should have listened when I told you to stay away from the Duke, he said to Ilara. Cashin wiped blood from his mouth. You made one mistake. Severin smiled. Which was? You believed she was my weakness. Ilara looked at him. Cashin's eyes never left Severin. She is the reason I came. Severin ordered his men to bind them. They dragged Cashin toward the altar and chained his wrists to an iron ring. Severin leaned close. Your brother discovered my financial records. I couldn't allow him to expose me. Cashin's breathing became uneven. You murdered him. Yes. The admission struck harder than any blade. Cashin pulled against the chains, but Severin laughed. You spent years believing you failed your brother. I wanted you broken by guilt before I took everything from you. Ilara's eyes filled with anger. You didn't break him. Severin turned toward her. You hugged him once. She met his gaze. And that was enough to remind him he was still human. Severin raised his sword. Before he could strike, the chapel bell rang. Once. Twice. Then dozens of footsteps thundered outside. The villagers had followed them. The blacksmith entered first, carrying a hammer. Behind him came the baker, the stable workers, farmers, and several royal guards. Tomas stood among them. I told the queen everything, the boy announced. Severin's face went pale. His men surrendered. Cashin's chains were broken, but he immediately turned toward Ilara. She was standing perfectly still. Then she swayed. Cashin caught her before she fell. You're hurt. Only a little. Blood was spreading across her sleeve. Cashin's face drained of color. You were stabbed. It isn't deep. His hands trembled as he pressed cloth against the wound. You shouldn't have come. Ilara looked up at him. I wasn't going to let you face this alone. For once, Cashin had no argument. He pulled her carefully against his chest. And beneath the broken chapel roof, surrounded by people who had come to save him, the Duke finally understood something he had spent years refusing to believe. He was not alone anymore. But when the royal guards searched Severin's abandoned carriage, they found a sealed document hidden beneath the seat. It carried the king's private seal. And the name written inside belonged to someone Cashin trusted more than anyone. The truth about his brother's death was bigger than Severin. Cashin stared at the sealed document for several seconds before breaking the royal wax. The signature at the bottom belonged to Chancellor Alastair Dane, the king's most trusted advisor. Ilara watched Cashin's face change as he read. What does it say? He handed her the document. It revealed that Alastair had secretly financed Severin for years. Together, they had stolen money from the crown, and Cashin's younger brother had discovered the evidence. His death had been arranged to silence him. Cashin closed his eyes. The man I trusted most helped kill my brother. Ilara took his hand. You trusted the wrong man. That doesn't make your kindness a mistake. Cashin looked at her. Why do you always know what to say? I don't. Then why do you stay? Ilara smiled gently. Because you need someone who will. Before dawn, Cashin brought the evidence to the king. Alastair was arrested, and Severin was sentenced for murder and treason. The court finally learned the truth about Cashin's brother, but the victory did not erase the grief. For weeks, Cashin struggled with the silence that followed. He had spent years believing that strength meant carrying pain alone. Now Elara showed him another kind of strength. She stayed beside him. She listened when he spoke. She held his hand when memories became unbearable. And slowly, the Duke began to laugh again. One evening, Cashin took Elara to the old alley where they had first met. The broken stones had been cleared, and flowering vines covered the walls. Elara looked around in surprise. "You changed it." "I changed many things." He turned toward her. "But this place matters most." "Why?" "Because this is where I stopped pretending I didn't need anyone." He reached into his coat and withdrew a small velvet box. Elara's breath caught. "Cashin." "I spent my entire life believing love was a weakness," he said. "Then you found me at my worst, and instead of walking away, you held me." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. "I don't want another life without you." Elara's eyes filled with tears. "Yes." Cashin smiled. "Was that a yes to the question I haven't asked?" "It was." He laughed, and she had never heard a happier sound. Their wedding was held beneath the same stone archway. But the greatest surprise came afterward. Cashin had secretly transformed his family's neglected estate into a refuge for orphan children and families ruined by famine. Elara became its director, and the first child they welcomed was the young daughter of the valet who had helped expose Severin. Then Cashin gave the estate away. Not to the crown. Not to another noble family. To the people of Belgrave. The Duke who had once guarded every possession now gave away almost everything he owned. When Elara asked why, he simply answered, "I spent too long believing I needed walls to keep people out." He looked at the children running through the gardens. "Now I know I only needed a home worth opening." Years later, travelers still told the story of the feared Duke of Belgrave. But they told it differently. They spoke of a man who had once been found crying alone in an alley. They spoke of the woman who refused to leave him there. And they spoke of the garden that replaced the alley, where children laughed beneath the same archway that had once sheltered a broken man. Every evening, Cashin and Elara walked through those gardens together. Sometimes he still remembered his brother. Sometimes grief returned without warning. But he no longer faced it alone. One evening, Elara slipped her hand into his. "You're smiling." Cashin looked at her. "You're still here." "Of course." He kissed her forehead. "That remains the greatest surprise of my life." She laughed. And beneath the golden evening sky, the Duke who had once believed himself abandoned finally understood the truth. The hug that saved him had not changed his life because it erased his pain. It changed his life because it taught him that even after cruelty, loss, and betrayal, love could still build something beautiful. And the woman who found him crying became not only his wife, but the person with whom he would spend the rest of his life, making sure no one else had to cry alone.